We need to make sure that this is a place that looks like somewhere that people care about. We need to have an active role. We may need to have an active role in managing something to clean up, but again, we don't have unlimited money to buy land, so we have to be very strategic in that. We can talk about writing down land costs to developers, possibly. Again, that the developers like that idea that we subsidize it. And we're looking at the numbers to say maybe sometimes development won't happen without some kind of subsidy. That's something we need to understand. And if we're committing ourselves to that, we need to know what we're signing ourselves up for. We don't want to basically say, oh, something will happen. That can't happen. So it's about promises made, promises kept. Promoting the area for a corporate campus. There's a lot of folks said, hey, this could be, especially the folks who work in a corporate campus, are often attracted to living near a central city. They like the idea of walking and biking and convenient to shops. These are things that folks who employ white-collar workers tell us. A lot of those would like the amenities. I mean, not that blue-collar workers don't, but we heard different opinions that some folks. So there's some people who said, my workforce really likes this central city location. And other folks who said, my workforce sometimes would rather just have a lot of surface parking and be convenient to access it. So you hear that different angles on that. And again, there's a balance saying, well, what do we in some areas say, well, it comes down to the city, would the city benefit more? The city and residents benefit from having proximity to jobs versus proximity to nice residential areas. And that's not an easy to answer question, because the answer is basically both, but sometimes there's a choice. And again, two other things, but I'm pretty much wrapping up here. This is where we are right now. Our development feasibility and fiscal impact analysis that I referenced earlier is nearly done. We're looking forward to rolling that out soon. We have to make sure that everyone internally has seen it before we can get it out. I would say it's shocking, but it does help us outline. If we say, okay, this is our vision, this is starting to put numbers on that vision, saying if we're signing on to this, the implication is this in terms of what we expect to happen and what our role should be. I think that's an important next step in implementation. We're going to have ongoing public input. We've had a very successful business survey that's been sort of basically, I should say businesses, but it's really everyone who owns property touching the river or right near the river in the study area. We'll be collecting information. We also have been talking, of course, with groups like AFCAC. Above the Falls is anyone from AFCAC here? No. It's the Above the Falls Citizen Advisory Committee, sort of a group that was formed after Above the Falls to implement, and still is out there. And we're looking to recommend stuff to our city council about this spring. Again, sort of going back to what they asked us to do and revisiting and saying, okay, this is what you, where do you want to, what's your direction for us in the next steps? So, and that's about it.
Maybe we'll let Dane take the floor here, and then we'll direct questions to both.
Great, thanks. Well, I don't have a...
Luna, tie a rope to that.
I don't have a formal presentation. What I actually wanted to do was...
Announce?
It's funny that you mentioned that. We had a park board meeting last night, and I was talking about the design competition. I was so worried I was going to, because I kept talking about the winning team, and I kept thinking, God, don't say. So I want to talk a little bit about the design competition and talk a little bit about the design competition, but I also want to talk just some more generalities about just introducing myself to the community. One of the things, so I'm going to start there, and then I'll talk about the design competition last. For those of you who don't know, I actually literally just moved to Minneapolis at the end of December. I started with the park board November 1st, but between November and December, I was on the plane a lot, back and forth between Ann Arbor, which is where I've been for the last 23 years of here, and then I moved here at the end of December. And I'm thrilled to say that I'm living in the superintendent's house at 40th and Bryant, which is wonderful. It's in the middle of Glendale Farmstead, and it was built in 1910 actually for Theodore Worth, for him to live in. And every superintendent but 3 since him have lived in the house. So I'm thrilled to be reigniting that again and living in the house and using the house also as opportunities for the park board to hold events and invite the community. In fact, on Tuesday evening we had council members, county commissioners, state legislators, the mayor, and the park board for a social for us to interact with each other at a level that I don't think we've done very much in the past in this community. So part of what I view my job is getting out in the community for people to understand what the park board is here for, listen to the community, and also build relationships and partnerships. I think that my sense is that we need to do some rebuilding of those relationships that maybe have deteriorated a little bit over the past number of years. So I am a firm believer in that those of us who are in the public sector, and I'm going to speak for the park board in particular, but we are all here, we all have jobs because we're here to serve the community, what the community wants relative to parks. And that is a message I am hopefully is getting across to the employees. But it's really, we're here because the community values its parks. And the community needs to tell us what they want from us in terms of providing park services to the community. So, part of what I am doing a lot is getting myself out, meeting people, introducing myself, and I'm also encouraging our staff to get out in the community. And I'm thrilled that Scott is here this morning. I didn't know he was going to be here, and I was really happy to see him because he's doing exactly what I want us to be doing, which is he's the CSA lead for this area, so he needs to be out in the community, talking to people in the community, finding out what they want, what can we be doing better at our recreation centers, what we can be doing to improve the services in each part of the city, because it's not a cookie-cutter approach. Every part of the community has different needs from a parks and recreation perspective, and the only way we're going to know what each part of the city needs is for us to be out and meeting people so that you feel comfortable approaching us and talking to us about what you need and want from us from a parks perspective. So fundamentally, that's really how I operate, and I feel really strongly about that. So I hope that you feel comfortable as with Scott and other people that you come across the park board. If there's concerns or issues you have or things that you want to tell us about that we're doing great, please let us know so that we can continue the great legacy I think the park board has in this community. From a professional standpoint, I've been a parks and recreation professional my entire career for, sad to say, over 30 years. I mean, not sad, but for over 30 years. And I grew up in the Adirondacks in upstate New York. And I think that's where I began my love of parks and recreation. My father was a veterinarian, and his practice was right next to our house. And we lived in a beautiful part of the country. And we did a lot of camping, skiing. My father would flood our front yard every winter, so we'd have a skating farm. He built us a backstop in our backyard, so ours was the neighborhood yard. So yeah, I think it's really where I started my love of parks. So I'm thrilled to be working in a community that really cares so passionately about its park system. Most recently, I come from Ann Arbor, where I was there for 23 years. All 23 years I was involved in parks. The last 8 years I was deputy city administrator, so had a much broader responsibility, which I actually think is going to be very beneficial for me. I was actually responsible for planning and development in the city, as well as community development, which handled all of the HUD funding for affordable housing, CDBG money, home funds, neighborhood stabilization program money, as well as human service programs. And then I also oversaw the city's housing commission, which is all the public housing in Section 8. And then all the land acquisition for the city, for the park system in particular. So I feel like that broad experience will actually be really helpful for me here in the city to figure out ways to integrate our park system, I think, differently than what the history of parks in the country have been. Most park systems were very independent and, saw their borders as the parks. I think the world today is very different, and we need to integrate not only parks, but cities and counties and businesses in ways that were different than before. And so I'm really excited about different opportunities that we can do to make sure that we're serving the needs of all the residents of the city. And again, as I said, I think every aspect of the community is a little bit different because of the socioeconomic differences across the city, as well as cultural differences. And for us to be sensitive to those and not just provide services that are historically what we've done in the past. And so I'm going to be challenging the staff to do things a little bit differently so that we're really truly meeting the needs of the diverse population here. So that's just kind of a little bit of background on me. In terms of the design competition, I feel like I kind of died and went to heaven by getting this job and walking into this design competition that was already underway, because I view this as really an opportunity for us to build the legacy of all the great work that was done in creating the chain of lakes, the Grand Rounds, all of our parks, and it's really taking the original natural resource that was here in Minneapolis and has been here, which is the river, and really redeveloping it and enhancing a major resource in the city and really building, parks along that river and offering something in this section of the city that I think is just incredible. Building on the work that was done along the Central Riverfront over the last 20 years. And again, I think as Hallie said, take strong parts of the city, build up on those fringes, and I think here's a perfect opportunity for us to build off what was done in the Central Riverfront, extend that further north along the river. And it's a really wonderful, wonderful opportunity for us. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take 20, 30, 40 years for all that to happen. But to build a vision and get momentum around continuing the work along the Central Riverfront is really exciting. And the park board, and I think the jury, which is made up of a very diverse set of professionals, not only locally, regionally, but nationally, are just thrilled with the response from the community and how excited people are about what's happening today. So today at 11, not earlier, we will be announcing the winning team, and I will also be talking about next steps and how we're going to move forward. I will give you a little preview. We have begun very initially talking about next steps, and part of the challenge for us has been we did not know what we were going to be presented with in terms of the 4 design teams. So being able to plan our next steps was pretty impossible for us to do because we didn't know what we were going to get in terms of options and things to consider. So it's really only been in the last week since the presentations were made at the Walker that we were even able to begin talking about it. So the winning team is actually in town and will be here at the pavilion at the Nicollet Island Pavilion for the announcement. We are spending literally the rest of the day all day tomorrow with them to start developing strategies for next phases. Our intent is it's going to take us about 4 months. It's very complex, all the things that we need to consider and deal with. But with our intent being that in June we will be announcing the implementation phase and taking that actually to the park board in June, getting their support and buy-in for how we actually begin initiating both the framework along the river as well as identifying a specific project and how we're going to do that, a project and a site for development. That is not something we will be making a decision on the next 4 months, but what we will do is lay out a process to identify that. It's going to have a lot of community engagement. Our expectations, we're actually going to create a steering committee that's going to be made up of a diverse group of business, political, citizen groups to help shape and advise us and guide us through this process. And strengthen our partnerships and collaborations with different groups and agencies to help us actually keep this process moving forward. We've got to identify funding resources, both public and private, for the development. We have to figure out a plan and the integration with the Above Falls plan, the city's comprehensive plan, parks comprehensive plan, making sure all that's integrated. The whole community engagement process, which is going to be very extensive as part of this. And another major piece is communication, both within the community and with different groups that we're working